Hello, my name is Karen Jones. I am the Executive Director of Global and Graduate Programs for the University of Houston Law Center. There are many great reasons to enroll in a UH Law Center program. I'm just going to give you three. First, value. In addition to our outstanding programs, LL.M Guide has named UH Law Center as a top 10 budget program, recognizing that we provide a world-class education at an affordable price. Second, location. UH Law Center is located in one of the most vibrant and thriving cities in the U.S., home to championship sports teams, world-class restaurants, Fortune 500 companies, and top law firms, all in the most diverse city in the country. Third, people. Award-winning, knowledgeable, and engaging professors who are tops in their fields, the incredible students in our graduate programs who come from a variety of backgrounds and from all over the world. So, I invite you to get familiar with our programs, take a look at the city, and get to know the Global and Graduate Programs team.
Thank you, Karen. And now we're going to begin our third session, LL.M Admissions Advice. This session will be moderated by Diane Penneys Edelman, Director of International Programs and Adjunct Professor of Law at Brooklyn Law School.
Okay, that's better. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having us. And if all of us can be online, great, we're all set. Hi, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying and learning from the presentation so far, and I hope that you'll continue to learn from ours in the next one. As Michelle said in introducing me, I'm the Director of International Programs at Brooklyn Law School in Brooklyn, New York, and an adjunct professor of law there, where I do teach the fundamentals of American law to our international LL.M students. With me today, you see my colleagues, Robynn Allveri from University of San Diego School of Law and Heather Miller from Texas A&M School of Law. And you can see on this slide the topics that we'll be covering today. And we'll also put our email information into the chat in a little bit. But in any event, we're each going to mention a little something about our programs, and then I'll engage with our speakers on a series of topics, namely these: doing your research, networking, preparing your personal statement, and recommendations. And we'll have time to talk about some other topics as well. In terms of our program, we are a standalone law school, and I think we're in the minority here with a lot of the schools that have been presenting today. By standalone, I mean we're not part of a university. We're just a law school. And it's kind of neat because it gives us an intimacy. And at the same time, it's different because we don't have a gymnasium and other types of things to offer. However, we are in New York City, and that's one of the things we have to offer. Our school is almost 125 years old, and it's in the heart of Brooklyn Heights, a few minutes walk from the state and federal courthouses, from the public defenders as well as the district attorneys, and many law offices, a park, and the good old Brooklyn Bridge, which is wonderful to walk over. We are one subway stop from Manhattan, from Wall Street, and about a half an hour by subway to the heart of Manhattan. But basically, the law school is next to a building where all of the subways that go all over New York City are located. We have specialties in three areas: intellectual property, corporate law, and immigration law, all of which are quite popular. So that's just a snapshot of our school. And why don't we turn next to Robynn.
Hello, is my volume okay? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you all for attending this webinar. We're very excited to be part of this panel. And as you heard Diane say, my name is Robynn Allveri. I'm from the University of San Diego School of Law. And we are located in Southern California, all the way down in the corner, about 30 minutes or less from the international border with Mexico. And it's about 2 hours south of LA when traffic is good. And yeah, we are a private Catholic university, small to medium in size, maybe about 9,000 students or so total population. And at the law school, it's around 900. Most of them would be JD students, but we have a good sized group of LL.M students as well. So we'll be focusing on LL.M programs geared for international applicants today. But here at USD, we do have 4 LL.M programs that are designed for people who hold an American JD degree. So they've been trained and have foundational knowledge in US law. They've probably taken all their bar exam subjects. And therefore, we have alternative programs for our international applicants. So we have 3 of those. One is our campus program called the online campus program called the LL.M in US Law. And we also have an online version of the LL.M in US Law launching this summer, which we're very excited about. And then we also offer an LL.M in Spanish, which is called the Maestria, for students in Latin American and other Spanish-speaking regions that cannot come to the U.S. in person. So that's a brief intro, and I will turn it now over to Heather, Texas.
Howdy, as we say at Texas A&M. Can y'all hear me okay? Yeah, perfect, wonderful. So Texas A&M is actually located in College Station, which is about halfway between Austin and Houston. But the law school was originally started, much like Brooklyn, as a standalone law school about 40 years ago. But just 10 years ago, Texas A&M acquired it. So now we have the benefit of being both semi-standalone while also having all of the privileges of being part of a large university. So we have 2 programs that are in person, our intellectual property and our general legal studies program. The general program is most often called our bar track program. The majority of the students that will go through that are interested in sitting for the bar exam. Most will sit for the bar exam in Texas, though some will go on to sit for the bar exam in either New York or in California. We also have several online programs that allow students to stay at home and study online. You can complete any of the programs in as little as 1 year. Sorry, I don't mean to be stumbling over my words. So anyway, that is a brief little bit of information about us. And I want to make sure that since we got a little bit of a late start, that we have a chance to get to all of our topics. So I'm going to turn it back over to Diane.
Thank you. And happy to have such a diverse group of us presenting information today. So the first topic we were going to talk about is doing your research. And you are actually all to be congratulated for having started that already by coming to this webinar. And if you look around and you follow kind of the LL.M scene, you'll probably see that there are often webinars by individual schools as well as group ones like this or organizational ones. So keep your eyes peeled for those sorts of things. You may also hear about LL.M fairs, which are actual virtual or live fairs in or near enough to you that you can attend, and you can go either from virtual or actual table to table and speak with representatives of those schools there. They may help you to decide which cities or countries or areas you want to be in when you earn your LL.M. So think about that as you look around, and think about places you've always wanted to visit, or places where you're really interested in the legal community, or you think you might want to practice law, and they may help you get started. And I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about visiting schools. But let me turn it over back now to Robynn, to talk about what kind of LL.M you may want to obtain and where you might want to practice.
Okay, great. Thank you, Diane. One point that we did want to mention is that it's important to think about what city or region that you may want to study in, because chances are you will be putting down some roots there and be there for a while, maybe a year, maybe longer, and possibly take a bar exam in that state. So you should just strategically think about which schools to apply to based on those types of needs or goals that you have. And then secondly, look in depth at the LLM programs that are offered by the schools that you're thinking of, to see if they offer areas of concentration that you are interested in, or perhaps allow you the opportunity to take bar exam subjects. That's important to quite a few of our applicants. So those are just things to keep in mind as you're narrowing down your choices for the most suitable schools to apply to. For example, at USD, if you had an interest in business and corporate law or criminal law, IP, tax, international law, you could focus on those concentrations in our LLM program on campus. But if you preferred to take your courses in Spanish, you could do that with the online LLM in Spanish. So that's one thing to think about as you are actually a big thing to think about when you're narrowing down your choices of LLM programs. So we usually like to tell people, think mostly about whether you want to focus on a particular area and specialize, or do you want to take a wide variety of courses and lots of different electives in different areas of law, or perhaps take bar exam subjects. So based on the answer to that question, your LLM curriculum will be tailored to meet your needs. And I think all of our schools have academic advisors that would lead you through the process and help you enroll in the courses that are most appropriate for those goals. The last point I'd like to mention here is thinking about the state where you may want to take your bar exam. So if you're looking for the New York bar exam, it might make sense to do an LLM program in New York, because they would be most well-versed in teaching the nuances of law that will be taught on the New York bar exam. But if you want to take the California exam, maybe a California LLM program makes more sense for you. But as you've heard from prior panelists, it is possible to sit for bar exams in states other than where you attended your LLM program. Just, having gone through the process myself as a former JD student, it made more sense to go to law school where I thought that I may want to take the bar or practice law. So that would be one thing I would pass along to you, potential applicants, as you're thinking about physically, geographically, where you would like to do your LLM program. Heather, I think you had some points you wanted to cover here as well, right, on doing your research?
Yes, absolutely. Diane, would you like to cover the rest of the topics, or did you want to jump in first?
No, why don't you cover them, and I'll throw in some points too if they haven't been mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So some other ways to do your research about programs is the World Wide Web, to log on. There's different places that you can visit, like International Jurist, to learn about some of the programs. And then you can go directly to the school's website to learn more there as well. And don't just take a look at the LLM side, also look and see what's going on with the JD program. Now, some of the JD programs might not be available to you, as you may have previously learned in other sessions. I think the first session where they talked about that clinics weren't allowed in some states for LLM students, but you can get an idea for how active the student body is and some other things that are going on within the law school. If you're able to come to the United States, visiting the law school is a great idea. Some law schools, if you're not able to do that, may also have virtual tours. I know that ours on our website isn't necessarily as good as being here in person, but you really get a rough idea for the general area as well as the law school in hearing from some student perspectives. And in the same vein, kind of think about where you want to go to law school and then research the city in particular. So Dallas and Fort Worth is often combined into one big city, because if you go from one end to one end, it's going to look the same to you. It's going to look like one big city, but the flavor of Fort Worth is very different than the flavor of Dallas. And the flavor of Minneapolis is very different than the flavor of San Diego. And New York is very different from Miami. So think about and research those cities. What might be a good fit for you, your personality, and your career goals. Find out, we mentioned previously, if you're interested in sitting for the bar exam, whether or not the degree from the particular law school will let you sit for the bar exam, if that's a priority. If it's not a priority, then that's one thing to check off your list. And then be sure to take any required English language proficiency language exams. Each university is going to have different requirements. So for instance, some universities and law schools will accept the Duolingo and others will not. Some will have certain criteria that you need to meet for the TOEFL or IELTS, and others will have different criteria. And then some may even have alternate waivers. So if your undergraduate or your LLB was taught in English, or if you earned a secondary degree from an English-speaking country, you may be able to apply for an English language proficiency waiver.
In here, all of these points are important in trying to track down the places where you want to apply. And as my colleagues mentioned, videos are a great something to do, not just the videos of the location, but of the specific law schools, but of what's going on in the area. If you know that you happen to have a love for opera, think about cities like New York or other cities that may have a lot of opera. If you want to be near the beach, look at cities that are in coastal areas. Or if you want to be in other parts of the country where you have access to mountains, take a look at that. That's important because even if you're there for a year, you might say, I want to stay here, or I want to be able to visit these places. The other thing I want to add to about school visits is you'll see that lots of schools have an LL.M visiting day, where you'd be going with lots of students, and it's great because you'd be meeting people from a lot of different countries. But you know what? If it's not convenient for you, or if you are in the area and want to do something a little different too, don't hesitate to contact the person or some of the people in charge of international programs or visits to the law school and arrange a visit on your own. Sometimes it's great to just meet with the folks involved with the program by yourself and feel like more of an individual. You can also sometimes arrange to sit in on a class. Let's say you're passionate about immigration law or about law and the media. Maybe you can sit in. And I have heard from visiting students that they really like these individual visits, although, perhaps they're getting a broader look if they come with another group. So if you can, sometimes you can do both within a couple of days. And don't feel pressured to do it, but it's just something to consider. And again, check out the ability to sit for whatever bar exam. This is going to be prominent on every law school's website. The other thing I would suggest that you do is you should feel free to go to a law school and specifically asks these questions of the directors in a meeting or by email. But try not to send a message that just says, I'm interested in your law school. Please tell me about your LL.M program. Show that you've done your research first. So send a message saying, I've read about your such and such aspect of your LL.M program. Is it true that you can do this? Or can you tell me more about that? And it shows a little something special about you that hopefully the reader will keep in mind when considering your application. Our next topic is networking. And we've started talking about that already, but in this one, my colleagues have specific questions on this. So Robynn, could you start out talking about speaking with faculty members and also connecting with others?
Sure. Thank you very much. So just as Diane mentioned, we're in a networking phase that will hopefully help you as you're going through your LL.M application process, building those bridges, connecting with people who can give you some different insights that are important as you make that decision. So first of all, asking faculty members at your particular law school, even if you've graduated, maybe a former professor, to see if they have contacts at any of the schools that you're thinking of, or if they can recommend an LL.M program that might be a good fit for you. You might be surprised to find that you have one or more faculty who teach at a particular campus, in the US, or have a colleague who's on the staff at a law school that you're thinking about applying to. And you can, in terms of kind of those professional faculty contacts, you can also find out if there are alumni, maybe from your country or region, that the law school that you're thinking of could put you in touch with. I often do that, right? We have applicants coming from all over the world, and they don't always want to hear how great San Diego is from somebody like me, because I'm here all the time. But they would rather hear the experience maybe from a former student who's gone through the program. And so no matter which state or region you're looking for, chances are there are alumni who would be able to tell you what their experience was like in that state. And that can be much more helpful than hearing it, from an admissions advisor at the school. And so there should be no reason that you can't get in touch with alumni who are familiar with the program and share those insights with you. You can also use things like LinkedIn to find alumni. If the law school that you're asking about does not have a direct contact, or they're not sure if there are alumni in your area, LinkedIn is a great tool to do that search, look for the school name, and then people from your country, and you'll probably be surprised that quite a few people pop up that you can connect with. Okay, so that's all I have right now on the networking function. So I will turn it back to Heather and Diane.
Heather?
Thank you so much. Robynn really shared some great thoughts with you, especially about the importance of LinkedIn. Especially since when there's administrator turnover, new administrators may not have access or may not have the relationship with former alumni, but those former alumni are often still very willing and happy to talk with you about their experience. So thank you again. And then we had a couple of other things that we wanted to talk about. So one of them is attending events like this, where you're getting to hear from a variety of law schools, and not just about the particular law schools, but overall tips and things to watch out for while you're making such a huge decision with your life, going to another country, laying out not only the time, but the finances to earn this degree, and making sure that it meets your goal. But there's also other online LM events that you can attend. So the Law School Admissions Council, or LSAC, who you may choose to apply to law schools through, host a virtual LL.M fair with law schools from all across the United States and Canada each September. You can sign up for that. I believe it's free for attendees, and that gives you an ample opportunity to chat with a variety of law schools from all over this side of the world. You maximize your time that way because they're all in one spot, more or less. You just have to click over to their virtual booth. You can explore, click on the links that they provide, and then you can ask whoever's attending the booth questions about the particular program. So not only do you get to talk to somebody live, but it's a concentrated place to do your overall research about various programs and degrees. And then Education USA will sometimes host live fairs for LM programs. I know they do one in Europe, they do one in South America, but they're also a great resource to tap into in general, because they'll host other events like crafting personal statements or making connections in the United States. And they're employed by the US government with the sole purpose of encouraging international applicants to come to the United States and earn a degree with us. Now, they represent more than law schools. They'll represent undergraduate and other master's and doctoral programs, but they're a good resource. They have home offices in a variety of cities all over the world, probably several in your home country that may be convenient for you to attend. And they'll be happy to schedule a meeting with you to go over what it means to study in the United States, not just how to find a good law school that's a good fit for you and your goals. Back to you, Diane.
Thank you. And I would just reiterate what my colleagues have mentioned about getting in touch with alumni of schools that you're interested in. Either you might be able to find out by yourself doing research, but more likely you can find out by contacting folks at the possible schools you'll go to say, I'm from Brazil. Are there any alumni from Brazil engaged of your LL.M program engaged in corporate law? And nowadays, because we have Zoom and because we have email, you can be in touch with them as long as you have the right time zone. You could be in touch with them just like you're sitting in the same room, which is really, really fantastic. It's a way of feeling like you have more of a connection when you're getting that information. So another item in terms of networking I wanted to mention to you is join some organizations. And some of these might be at the schools where you have earned your first degree in law, for example, or they might be at bar associations. So, for example, here in the US, we have the American Bar Association, which generally speaks to lawyers of all types, academics, practitioners in every field, all across the US and beyond. Then we have state bar associations. For example, here, the New York Bar Association. In Pennsylvania, where I spent many years, the Pennsylvania Bar Association. And then even smaller groups, counties within our states, or regions, if you want to call them that, and cities have their own bar associations. So depending upon how far you want to reach out or how much you want to explore, consider joining some of these as a student. Often the membership is free, and then you will get constant invitations to different kinds of meetings. So for example, in New York this past fall, the New York City Bar Association, certainly one of the largest bar associations in the country for a city, had a program especially designed for LL.M students in the half dozen or so schools in the New York area. But of course, anyone else could attend as well. And students who attended got to hear from practicing lawyers about the practice of law in New York and got to ask questions as well. So it's a really great opportunity for you not only to learn, and for you to see that there are other people like yourself and other people like the folks in your program, but also to network with lawyers. The lawyer gets up there and says, I'm a judge in the family court. I used to practice family law and domestic relations law for 20 years. And first I worked at the small firm, and then I worked for the government, and then I became a judge by doing certain things. And you think, that is something I really want to do sometime. Go up and talk to the judge afterward. And I think that this is something that, sometimes we're intimidated by talking to professors or talking to judges or talking to practicing lawyers. But people love to be asked questions. And the people who speak on these panels go because they love speaking with those who attend. So think about that and go meet these people. Also, join organizations at the law school where you go for your LL.M. At all of our law schools and the other ones you may consider, there are so many student organizations where you can not only just meet students interested in the things you're interested in, but you can help to plan events like speakers and gatherings and that sort of thing, where you can get more of a connection into what you want to do. So now we're going to talk about a very personal part of the application process, namely personal statement and recommendation letters. So I'm going to start with Robynn on these topics.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Those of us who are on admissions committees, for example, I am, we read a lot of applications, including the personal statements. And it is a very kind of an intimate snapshot into the motivations, the goals, the dreams that the student has or the applicant has. So some important points to think about as you're drafting your personal statement. First of all, I like to have this rule of thumb I call concise is nice. Meaning, if you can, try to get your statement onto maybe one page, possibly two. There may be limits on how many pages you can actually include in your application, but reading a lot of applications, it just makes it a little easier on the admissions committee if the statements are more concise. And it also helps show your skills as a writer, getting everything boiled down to the most essential points that you want to convey. So try to see if you can get that maybe no longer than 2 pages. Of course, if it's longer than that, that's fine. It's not going to be rejected, but it would be much appreciated if you can do that type of concise writing. And secondly, in your statement, I would mention if there's a particular area of law that you are interested in studying or that you have experience with, that can help the admissions committee not only learn about you more, but also possibly suggest different courses that are available to you at that school. different student organizations that work with that topic of interest that you have, different centers and institutes that may be available at the law school or on campus that align with that area of interest, or people that they can help you network with that are interested in those same areas of law. So that's why it's important to mention if you do have a particular interest in a field of law. Now, you may really want to take a little bit of everything, and not concentrate or specialize in a field. That's great, and it's important to mention that as well. So it just helps us learn a little bit more about you and how we can best serve you and match you up with the correct program.
Thank you. Heather.
Thank you. So some other things to consider when giving your personal statement or writing your personal statement, in addition to what Robynn said, is concise is nice, is deciding where you want to focus the majority of your personal statement. Some personal statements that I read, they tell, an applicant's history, and they had this pivotal moment where they witnessed this great injustice. Maybe they were 5 years old, and thereafter they've always had this burning desire to right wrongs and become a lawyer and fight injustice. And those stories are lovely, and it's a very important part of who they are as an applicant, but they'll spend 3/4 of their personal statement on their history and on that topic. And then they'll spend maybe half a paragraph about why they want to study at Texas A&M School of Law or that particular law school and what their ultimate goals are. And it needs to be just the reverse when you're writing your personal statement. Tell us about your history. Maybe spend a paragraph about why you're interested in attending law school in the United States, why you wanted to become a lawyer in the first place, but then talk about the specific school and why you want to attend that school and what's drawing to you, why you're drawn to studying at Brooklyn Law School or the University of San Diego or Texas A&M or any of the other schools. But we want to make sure that when you're applying that our program is going to help you achieve your goals. And there's been multiple times where I've had to reach out to an applicant before sending their file to the admissions committee to make sure that we're going to be able to meet their goals and help them achieve what they hope to achieve. In addition to that, it's a good idea to kind of mention specific courses that you'd like to take from the law school or specific faculty that you're interested in studying with and why. Why would you want to study with a particular faculty member? Maybe you read one of their papers as part of your own law school curriculum, or maybe you read about a case when you were preparing for one of your own cases. Please put that in there. At the same time, I would caution you to not copy and paste from individual schools' websites. I'm on my website every single day. I know exactly what it says, and I know when somebody's copied and pasted. So before I turn it over to Diane, who's going to talk a little bit more about the subject, make sure everything's in your own words and that you're not just copying from a website and that you're putting some heartfelt thought and feeling into your personal statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, and thanks for that particular transition, because one of the things I think it's really important to focus on are the ethics of preparing your application. As someone who's looked at a lot of applications over time, it has come to my attention, not directly but indirectly, that it's pretty clear when applicants are using ChatGPT or AI or an expert on a particular legal topic to write their essays in their personal statements. Please do not do this. We are not, some of you speak English as a first language, and we expect your English to be good. But many of you who speak something else as your first language and studied in a different language, your English is strong, or maybe it's not as strong. But please do not try to make an impression by using something other than your own skills to write your essay. It's something that we check on. And if we find that your essay doesn't seem like it's something that an applicant would be submitting, we may defer our decision on your application, or we may ask you to demonstrate some sort of way in which we know that it's original. Similarly, and we don't expect perfection, We don't expect every essay to be just absolutely something that we could be publishing right away. We expect it to make sense, to be personalized, and to be strong. The other thing that some of you may have experienced, but you may know, is that some of our schools and more schools are starting to have individual Zoom sessions in connection with your application. And sometimes that may be just to explore your credentials, and other times it may be because we want to know more what your abilities in English are. Sometimes they're just speaking sessions and informational and individualized, but sometimes we may ask you to do writing sessions in which we have you online answer a series of questions about the law, and you have to submit the answer during the Zoom session. Therefore, you cannot have any assistance on it, but we want to know your true abilities in English. And this is a really, really important aspect of your application. Before we go on to recommendations, let me just add, most applications call for you to submit your curriculum vitae or resume with your application. That's all right for you to get some advice on the formatting and the phrasing so that it looks like a really clear resume. So look at different resumes online and that sort of thing, and make sure that yours is concise but clear about the kind of experience that you have, because you pretty much have to include it all along the way. And the other point I'd like to make is scholarships. All of us have offered scholarships of different amounts to students, and the methods that our law schools use to offer scholarships are different. We offer scholarships and then get immediate requests for more scholarships. Please think about this before you make the request. And also please be sure to read carefully the law school's webpage about how scholarships are offered and how any other special scholarship awards are offered, and follow those rules. And let me turn this back now to Robynn, talking about recommendation letters.
Thank you, Diane. We have a few points that we'd like to address about recommendation letters. I have maybe one or two that I'd like to cover, but I would like to let my fellow panelists chime in if they have something to say about other points on the recommendation letters. I'll kind of go through the mechanics of it, the not so fun part, but make sure, first of all, that you submit the correct number of letters of recommendation for your particular school. For example, at USD, we require a minimum of 1 letter of recommendation and allow a maximum of 4. So anywhere within that range would be considered fine. Just because the system allows you to have 4 letters of recommendation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get 4 letters. But just be aware of the parameters, or the limits, the maximum and minimum of letters that should be submitted, just to follow those instructions for the school. And along with those instructions, make sure that you know the proper procedure for submitting those letters of recommendation. You know, most law schools probably would not accept a letter of recommendation, like a copy coming directly from the applicant. They need it to either go through LSAC with your application package. It's called a CAS report, and that would normally come to the law school through LSAC. Or in some cases, your recommender may be permitted to email or mail their letter directly to the admissions office. But again, that would be coming directly from them and not being provided by you. So check with the schools that you're applying to make sure you understand kind of the ins and outs of how to get those letters of recommendation submitted properly. We also had a couple points, Diane and Heather, would you like to talk about the who should be writing these letters, or different technical aspects? Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Go ahead.
I'll talk a little bit about who you should ask to write your letters of recommendation. First and foremost, it should never be a family member or a close personal friend. It should be somebody who knows you professionally, either in an educational setting or in a work setting. And then make sure it's somebody who knows you and your work well. Sometimes applicants have the mistaken idea that we're impressed by titles. And while titles are impressive, I'm really interested in somebody who knows you and knows your work. So it might be a minister in the government or a senior judge who you met briefly, maybe at a networking visit. It's great to have those connections, but I'd really rather a direct supervisor or a professor that maybe oversaw some of the research that you did, write those letters of recommendation so that I can get a good idea of who you are as an individual and what your strengths and even weaknesses are to make sure that you're going to be a good fit for our program and our program is going to be a good fit for you.
I agree with all of that advice, and I would say that the variety that I've seen of recommendation letters consist of some of the ones my colleagues talked about that are the recommender first talks about how they know you, and typically they say, I'm a professor at so-and-so, and I have taught, and they give your name, in these 3 courses, and they talk about your strengths and all that sort of thing. And yes, if there's something, a difficulty you overcame, that's fine to include too. But usually a really good letter will talk about all the things that you did so well, and also will convey the depth of the writer's contact with you. I am sure that we all get the letters also, which are, I'm writing to recommend so-and-so who would be a great student at XYZ law school. They show a lot of interest in studying the law. And those recommendations really don't do anything to help us make our decisions. Something deep and meaningful is helpful. So we certainly don't expect you or want you to contact the people who you've asked and say, can you be sure to write this in depth and write it in a meaningful manner? You don't want to do that, but you want to choose carefully. You want to choose people whom you know have worked carefully with you. Perhaps you've had them for 1 course, perhaps you've had them for 3. Perhaps they've supervised you in working pro bono or in doing some outside legal work. Or they don't have to be your professors. You might be someone who is coming back for an LL.M. after practicing law for a while in your home country, or doing other kinds of legal or do-gooder or business-oriented work. Those recommendations are fine as well. But if they can touch upon what the person expects of your legal talents, that would be terrific. But again, we're really happy to read letters that are a page or so long and that really talk about, in a believable and strong way, how great you are. They should send them through the proper way, through the LSAC, because it's important that we get official letters on their letterhead, dated and signed. We will ask you for something else if we don't get that. And as you can see from the slide, one of the other slide has our email addresses, which we can also put in the chat because we're all open to speaking with you. But I think that's it, that we have hit our deadline on time, and I leave it to those in charge to, or let me ask first, Heather and Robyn, any closing comments?
Maybe just a teeny tiny point on recommendation letters. And maybe my panelists have seen this before, but it's quite easy to see when a letter is more like a form letter, like the name might be underlined or bolded and the name of the school. So there are some law schools, unfortunately, that those are the type of letters that they issue. But if you can get the more personalized letter, like Diane and Heather were talking about, that's much more effective. So watch out for the form letters of recommendation. They don't make as good of an impression.
Yes, talk about our schools as though you know about our schools. I too have seen those letters which have Brooklyn underlined every few minutes, or which are very general looking, and make them personal.
Thank you, Diane, Robyn, and Heather. Thank you. And stay with us for our last session. There's going to be a quick 15-minute break, and there will be a second part to a video. Then stay with us for our last session on You've Been Admitted, Now What?
you.